Have you ever heard of a revolution so bold that it was led by two women on the backs of war elephants? Not in modern times, not even in medieval Europe, but 2,000 years ago, in ancient Vietnam. This is the story of the Trung Sisters. A moment when history didn't just bend, it roared. It was the 1st century AD. The mighty Han Empire, ancient China's ruling dynasty, had stretched its iron grip deep into the fertile Red River Delta. Taxes were brutal, freedom crushed, the people silenced. But then, she rose, Trung Trak, a grieving wife, a noblewoman, a fire no empire could extinguish. After her husband was executed by a Han governor, Trung Trak did the unthinkable. She declared war. Beside her, her sister, Trung Ni. Together, they rallied over 60,000 men and women, farmers, villagers, mothers, daughters. They didn't march, they thundered on elephants. What began as grief became a revolution. What began as mourning became a roar of independence. Who were these sisters? How did they rise? And why does their legend still echo after 2,000 years? Let's go back to where it all began. Before they became warriors, they were daughters of a noble family in the land of Mei Lin. Trung Trak, the elder sister, was sharp-minded, calm, and resolute. She wasn't just a woman of beauty, but one of knowledge and strength. She read books, studied law, learned history, something rare for women of her time. Her younger sister, Trung Ni, was spirited and fearless, quick with a laugh, quicker with a blade. While Trak was the mind, Ni was the storm. Together they were balance, wisdom, and fire. And in the silence of their village, they watched their people suffer. The Han governor, Su Ding, was not just cruel, he was monstrous. He doubled the taxes, took lands from the locals, and used brutal punishments to silence dissent. When Trak married Thisash, a nobleman from a nearby province, they had hope, maybe together, they could rally the clans to resist. But the Han feared unity, and so they struck first. Thisash was arrested, tortured, executed, without trial. They left his body for display, a warning. But to Trung Trak, it wasn't a warning. It was a call. She didn't cry. She didn't flee. She gathered her people. She spoke to the elders. She rallied the villages. She took her grief and sharpened it into steel. And from the shadows of mourning, a plan began to rise. A rebellion not of kings, but of sisters. It began like a spark in the dark, whispers in marketplaces, meetings in candlelit huts, a glance shared between villagers who dared to hope. By the spring of 40 AD, the whispers became thunder. On the plains of Mei Lin, thousands gathered beneath banners of rebellion. The Trung sisters stood tall. Trung Trak atop a massive war elephant, her sister Trung Ni at her side. Armor gleaming, eyes fierce. Their call was simple, but it shook the soul of every villager. This land belongs to us. No empire will chain us again. The crowd erupted. Farmers lifted bamboo spears. Hunters brought bows. Mothers carried knives tucked in their belts. Even children ran messages between camps. The first strike came at dawn, a raid on the Han garrison near Mei Lin. Caught off guard, the Chinese soldiers scattered, their banners torn down, their weapons seized and handed to peasants who had never held iron before. Victory bred courage, and courage spread like wildfire. One after another, the sisters led their forces against Han outposts. At Chu Dian, villagers blocked the roads with flaming carts, forcing enemy troops into ambushes. At Hat Man, the sisters led elephants through the river shallows, smashing the gates of a fortress, while women rained stones and boiling water from baskets overhead. Everywhere they marched, the people rose. The rebellion swelled from hundreds to thousands, to an army 60,000 strong. In just months, 19 cities were liberated. Han officials fled in disgrace. Their fortresses burned, their names cursed in the streets. And on a day marked with drums and incense, Trung was declared queen. Not a queen of luxury, but a queen of defiance. The land was free. For the first time in 1,000 years, free. But across the northern border, the empire stirred. And empires do not forgive humiliation. News reached the Han court in Luoyang like a storm. 19 cities lost. Governors humiliated. A rebellion led by women. For the emperor, this was not just defiance. It was disgrace. And disgrace demanded blood. The emperor summoned Ma Yuan, known as the general who calms the waves. Cold, calculating. A man who had crushed rebellions before and left no trace behind. But this time, he came not to calm, but to destroy. In 42 AD, Ma Yuan marched south with 30,000 soldiers. Veterans of countless campaigns, armed with steel blades, crossbows, and siege engines. They carried food supplies enough for years, and they brought war elephants of their own. The Trung sisters were ready. They fortified the Red River Delta, digging trenches, building palisades of sharpened bamboo, and raising towers for watchmen. Every village became a fortress. Every farmer became a soldier. The first great clash came at Langbak. The Trung sisters' forces, entrenched on high ground, resisted wave after wave. For days, the air was filled with the hiss of arrows, the thunder of elephants, the clash of bamboo against steel. Han soldiers fell in the mud, trampled by beasts, drowned in the swamps. The sisters fought at the front, their voices carrying above the din, rallying their people again and again. But Ma Yuan was relentless. He cut supply lines, bribed wavering chiefs, turned hunger into a weapon, turned fear into a tool. Slowly, fortress by fortress, the rebellion bled. Food ran short. Villagers were punished for giving shelter. Entire hamlets burned to ash. By early 43 AD, the Han army closed in at the Hat River. The Trung sisters gathered their remaining forces, exhausted, outnumbered, but unbroken. The final battle raged across fields and riverbanks. Elephants crashed into iron phalanxes. Villagers fought with farming blades against armored soldiers. The river ran red with blood. Surrounded, the sisters refused to surrender. Instead, they rode their elephants into the heart of battle one last time. Symbols of defiance, choosing death over chains. The Han claimed victory, but they could not claim the soul of the land. They vanished, not in defeat, but in defiance. According to legend, the Trung sisters, facing certain capture, rode their elephants into the river and disappeared beneath the waves. Not prisoners, not martyrs, but symbols of what it means to rise, even when you're told to kneel. The Han Empire crushed the rebellion, but they could not erase it. They melted down the bronze drums of the Viet people, symbols of culture, pride, unity, turning them into weapons. They renamed villages, burned records, banned the Trung name. But still, the story lived. Mothers whispered it to daughters. Fathers lit incense by their altars. And in temples that defied time, their spirits were honored. In a world that tried to forget them, Vietnam remembered. Today, thousands of years later, their names still echo. Statues stand in their honor. Festivals are held in their memory. Schools bear their names. And their story still burns in the soul of a nation. They were the first queens of Vietnam, the first to rise, the first to say, "This land is ours." They taught us that strength has no gender, that courage is eternal, and that even if you fall, your voice can rise through centuries. We often ask, what makes a hero? Is it victory, glory, power, or is it something quieter, like sacrifice, conviction? The choice to rise when everything tells you to fall? The Trung sisters did not build an empire. They didn't leave behind riches or monuments of gold, but they gave something far greater, a heartbeat that would echo for generations. Their uprising, though brief, planted the seed of something unstoppable. The idea that Vietnam would never kneel forever. From then on, every time the land was invaded, a fire returned. A whisper grew louder. A story was retold. Trung Trak, Trung Ni. Names that still walk beside every woman who dares to lead, every soul who dares to dream of freedom. You can visit their temples today. You can stand beneath their statues. But perhaps you've already carried their legacy. Every time you raise your voice against injustice, every time you fight for your people, every time you remember who you are. Because legends don't end. They wait for someone else to rise. But is this truly the whole story? Or is there more still hidden beneath the river's surface where the elephants vanished?